they had to pull some strings because it was a low budget. This was funded almost entirely by money that was raised by Don Murray, the star of the show that played the part of Father Dismas. And what was interesting was that one of the things that I mean, it was minimally distributed, and supposedly this movie was under, I think at that time, about $600,000 or $700,000, and some of the people that starred in the show represented different well-known St. Louis figures. For example, Morris Schenker, the St. Louis and nationally, if not internationally renowned criminal attorney. He had actually been one of the early supporters of the Dismas house, and he was portrayed by an actor in that. So, anyway, that's I guess the sum total of what I know, but it was just close to me, and I thought our listeners would get a kick out of hearing what I knew about it.
Sure. All right, let's move on to another film that was partially shot in St. Louis in the late 70s called Escape from New York. Here's why we care about Escape from New York. It was directed by John Carpenter, who had just directed the original Halloween, and I do believe James Cameron was still a nobody. He was a special effects guy, and he would go on to make the Terminator, the original Terminator, a couple years later, and his career would just completely take off. It's one of Kurt Russell's most iconic characters, Snake Plissken. It had Lee Van Cleef, Ernest Borgnine, Donald Pleasance, Adrienne Barbeau, and Harry Dean Stanton, among others.
Yes, right.
That's quite a cocktail party right there.
Absolutely.
A good friend of mine who used to be a valet was a few years older than me, and he actually saw something happening down at Union Station one day, and he just went down because they were giving out free sandwiches, and he actually was believed to be a production assistant because he just kept showing up and watching what was going on, and he never participated in the production of the film except by eating the sandwiches. So,
well, you mentioned Harry there, Mr. Stanton.
Yeah.
Maybe a lot of folks don't know, but he was a Missouri boy. He's passed now, but I believe, if memory serves, he was originally from the Poplar Bluff area in southern portion of the state.
You don't know him, but you do know him. You take one look at this guy and you'll go, "Oh yeah, I've seen that guy in like 10 movies."
He was always working. He was a working actor, like we like to say in the business. But he was in a lot of stuff. The next film that I like to talk about, of course, is something that is its backdrop or the storyline is about St. Louis, and more importantly, St. Louis soccer. And the game of their lives was a film that was actually shot here in St. Louis in 2005. And basically, it was a drama that was directed by David Anspaugh, and the screenplay was by Angelo Puzo, and it was based on the 1996 book of the same title by Godfrey Douglas. The plot it's really kind of simple. Film is based on a true story of the 1950 U.S. soccer team, which against all odds beat England 1-0 in Brazil
in the World Cup.
1950 World Cup. Exactly right, John. So the story is about the family traditions and all manner of, we'll just say, stuff that made up the St. Louis portion of that team. They're basically two nationally recognized teams that came together to form this World Cup team. There was the lads from St. Louis, which we're talking about, and then there was some chaps from New York. And of course, there was always what we used to call St. Louis soccer. You know, I used to kick a little soccer when I was young, and we played a certain kind of what we call kind of aggressive soccer. New York, our East Coast soccer, they were a little more finesseful. You know, they were maybe a little better with footwork or whatever. But we played soccer here in St. Louis where we got what the country boys call Henri. We got Henri. So we got a lot.
Right.
We got a lot of cards thrown at us.
You didn't necessarily kick the ball.
Well, no.
Kick a few shins.
I tell you what, it's like the old story. I went to a fight and a soccer game broke out. That kind of thing. But there was one gentleman that was in that film. He was actually a well-known figure in St. Louis. He was a St. Louis comedian. His name was Craig Hawksley.
Craig Hawksley.
Absolutely.
Sure.
And he played the soccer teams from St. Louis's coach that eventually would go on to be the Pan Am coach that when he took the boys to Brazil. And the thing is that like so many things, money was tight. And they had to literally kind of go around begging to buy some new uniforms, but that upset. The only thing I guess I can compare it to was John, the 1980s hockey,
the Olympic hockey team,
the Olympic hockey game of Russia in the United States, and it was as big, if not bigger, than that. So. It was an incredible thing, but like I said, Craig Hawksley has passed away. He was a very good friend of mine. He actually worked with me on a couple of things that I did, but I just had to give a big shout out to them.
Oh yeah, he was great, and there was a 4 other names that you should know from this film. Obviously, Patrick Stewart.
Yes,
everybody knows him. Jonathan Rhys Davis. He was in the original Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yep.
Gerard Butler, who's a big action star. And this guy named Wes Bentley, who most people know from American Beauty. He was the kind of the outcast son of the next door neighbor that ends up killing the main character. But he was fantastic in American Beauty.
Well,
and the budget on this film, The Game of Their Lives, in 2004, 2005, when they shot it, was $20 million. So they dropped a few bucks in St. Louis.
They certainly did. Now, just one more thing about it. The film was originally called The Miracle Match. The Miracle Match. And what I guess isn't printed a lot, but I know for a fact that a gentleman by the name of Philip Anschutz, he's one of those mega billionaires. He's probably worth 15 or 20 billion or whatever. And he came from the Anschutz mining family. Now, Philip also, for some of the people out there in finance and that will know that Mr. Anschutz was responsible for putting together the Regal Entertainment Group, the Regal Theaters. He owned about 60% of the publicly traded company that he put together. But he actually put the money up for the production of this film. And the reason behind it was, like so many St. Louisans, although he was from Colorado, he was a big soccer fan, and he had a vision of national soccer teams being as predominant as our football is, and so he put this together as kind of like a recognition of the sport. Well, I tell you what happens so often is you're too busy spending your money and directing and doing this and doing that he forgot, or someone forgot, to do a title search on the title of the movie that he proposed, A Miracle Match. Well, they get the movie shot, it's in a can, and they're out there ready to go to the distribution stage of the film, and they get a cease and desist letter from the person that held the copyright to the title Miracle Match. And I said, oh boy, now what the heck you're going to do, Well, what you have to understand about Mr. Anschutz, he's a kind of a John Ford, John Wayne, all rolled into one. He's a tough guy, and but fair. Anybody that's ever done business with the guy will tell you he's a fair guy. He offered to pay them a reasonable figure for that title. Now, keep in mind, as you know, John, from the business, once you have the film together and you put the graphics and the print of the titles and so forth, I mean, it's really a pain in the butt to have to go back and redo that again. So he knew that would cost him money, and so he decided, well, I'll make a deal with the guy. Well, the gentleman that had the copyright said that he wanted $5 million for the rights to the title.
Yeah.
Well, the thing was, the movie, was like 15 million. Well, then this guy want 1/3 of the budget for the doggone title. Well, needless to say, he said no, not going to do it, and then they changed it. But that gives a little bit of history about it, So that's why I know
Sure.
about the Game of Their Lives.
All right, let's move on to
Sure.
one more quickie before the break.
Right.
We've got a movie called American Flyers, and
Yep.
here's why you care about it. It was directed by John Badham, and it was starring Kevin Costner right before Kevin Costner became Kevin Costner and started No Way Out, about the spy in the Navy, and just took off into the stratosphere. It also had, get this, Ray Don Chong, who was really famous in the 80s,
Right.
John Amos from Good Times,
Yep.
and a girl named Jennifer Grey, who was about to make Ferris Bueller and play Ferris Bueller's sister, Jeannie.
Yep. Well, actually, the movie was shot in St. Louis, and my sister Mary, and a big shout out to Mary. She just had her birthday a few days ago. I'm not going to say how old she is because she'll get after me. But
Happy 39th birthday.
There you go, 39 forever. But anyway, we watched that movie at the Westwood Marquee Theater in California, and we were all yelling because the movie opens up with Kevin Costner's brother in the movie riding his bike all the way down the riverfront on the cobblestone streets and back through, and he winds up getting on Lindell Avenue, and he stops his ride right down from the chase in some apartments on Lindell Avenue. But it was all about, as we're talking about, the whole world of biking and so forth, And it was a great movie, and I tell you what, if you could, I believe it's accessible. I want to say it's on Amazon, and it's a great movie. A lot of real cool scenes from St. Louis that everyone will recognize and so forth.
Yeah, it showcases the city pretty well.
It certainly does. Well, we're coming up on a hard break here, real quick, and I'm just going to let our listeners know that when we come back, we're going to talk about a documentary that was shot here in St. Louis back in 1965 for CBS. It was a CBS Reports, actually, at that time, by Charles Guraw, and it was called 16 Webster Groves. And we actually have a young lady that's with us that was actually at that school in 1965, and she's going to tell us how cool it was to be 16 in Webster Groves. Okay, so
I can't wait, brother.
Okay, so y'all stick around, and when we come back, we're going to be talking with Connie Bolte. Thank you.
Do you want to become a radio show host, or do you want to create a radio show? Well, Dr. Stan Fine can help you to have your own radio show and put you on 100 cities daily across the U.S. And you can immediately start recording from a live radio studio. As a radio industry veteran, Dr. Stan Fine has 12 years of experience and has produced and hosted over 1,000 radio shows with over 10 million listeners. Dr. Stan Fine knows how to make this happen for you. He's a pro, and he can turn your dreams into a reality. Dr. Stan Fine will help you with everything from learning how to promote your show, develop a host persona, interview techniques, market your show on social media, teach you how to get guests and sponsors, and more. Dr. Stan Fine can put you on the air nationwide daily to 100 cities. If you're interested in making your dream come true, if you want to see how it all works, then give Dr. Stan Fine a call at 314-710-8413. That's 314-710-8413. You've got nothing to lose, and Dr. Stan Fine can help make your nationwide radio dreams come true. If you're looking for a new, informative health and lifestyle show to gain knowledge and inspiration to help guide your journey to think, work, and live more powerfully, then you need to listen to Sage Advice with Melissa. It's live each Thursday from 10 to 11. Now, whether you're trying to improve your life from a mental, physical, or spiritual journey, Sage Advice with Melissa Coleman, CEO of Sage Skincare, delivers weekly advice from industry experts to provide you with insightful suggestions to allow you to thrive with a better quality of life. Melissa's mission? To guide you through the uncharted waters of health and wellness and to give you a voice to help improve your life. So be sure to tune in to Melissa on KWRH 92.9 FM every Thursday at 10 a.m. You'll be glad you did.
Hey, listeners, saying thanks to your customers is nice and polite, but expressing your gratitude in memorable and ongoing ways can boost your business. At Promo Experts LLC, we exceed our customers' expectations. For over 20 years, our product knowledge and experience has helped them with their marketing initiatives and trade show graphics. We are happy to put that experience to work for you. Quality products, great customer service, and prices are our number one priority. We work with you to find unique, creative, and new ideas that fit your image and expectations, helping you build strong relationships with your customers. When you select Promo Experts as your marketing partner, we help you to see more than the big picture. For more information about this exciting opportunity, contact Diane Carson, President, at 636-458-5241. That's 636-458-5241. Let Promo Experts help you. Have you always wanted to write your own book but don't know where to start? Publishing Concepts, a publishing company located right here in St. Louis, offers everything from consulting, book printing, copyrights, ISBNs and barcodes, print book layout, ebook and iBook layout, graphic design, cover design, ghostwriting, typing and editing, distribution, marketing, and more for an affordable price. Visit publishingconceptsllc.com or just Google Publishing Concepts to get started today or call 314-781-8880. That's 314-781-8880. Publishing Concepts. We help you sell more books.
Hey, welcome back to Movies and More. I'm Stacy Host. I'm here with John Brandon, my partner, broadcast partner.
Good afternoon.
Yes, well, yeah, by golly, it is. It's come up on lunchtime, and my stomach is letting me know it's just about that time. John, I thought before we interviewed our in-studio guest, Connie Bolte, that you might want to talk about one of the films that you said we were looking at, and that's Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. So can you tell us a little bit about the history of that film?
You want my personal angle or the film itself?
Both, John, because I remember you're sharing some stuff with me, and that I think that'd be very interesting to our listeners.
Okay. Well, here's a testament to a big mistake I made in my life. I was in college at Webster University when this film was being shot, and I was actually writing for the school newspaper. One day I walked in and I saw a little poster on the door that said they're looking for production assistants for this film that they're going to be shooting in St. Louis. Didn't say anything about who was in it, who was making it, or anything. It just said Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And I took one look at that and I said, that is the stupidest sounding movie I've ever heard of. I would never, ever want to work on that. It would be a complete waste of time. So a year from then, I was sitting in the movie theater watching it with my girlfriend and going, wow, what a mistake that was.
Right.
I had no idea because this was a film by John Hughes. Mm-hmm. John Hughes only made a handful of films, and mostly he wrote and directed his own films. He did 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Home Alone. I mean, the guy, he passed away about 14 years ago at a pretty young age, but he was one of the great filmmakers of the 80s. And of course, we all know it's a great holiday film. And, Steve Martin and John Candy, and both of those guys, those were two of the best iconic characters that they ever played.
No question about it. And relative to John Candy, he didn't make a lot of films after that. He was just a tremendous talent. And I can think of Splash and just any number of films that followed this, I believe. And he was truly a great talent, a great film. Well,
Yeah, and John,
go ahead.
John, let me say one more thing,
Sure.
if I can, about John
Absolutely.
Candy's days.
Yeah.
Just like 3 years later, he actually was in JFK, a real serious artistic film by Oliver Stone about what really happened to JFK.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember John Candy in it, but he plays this lawyer, this
Louisiana from New Orleans.
from Nolans. Yeah, Nolans.
Yeah.
Brother. And he was fantastic playing a very serious character.
Well, without any question, he was a tremendous talent, and we lost him way.
And they
way,
did
way
not-
too soon.
Just to clarify, they did not shoot the entire film in St. Louis.
No,
they only shot
Right.
part of it. A lot of the stuff in the airport at
Lambert,
Lambert Field, where he's walking across the runway in the snow. That all was shot in St. Louis. Probably maybe 15 or 20 minutes actual running time of the film, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, was shot in St. Louis.
Well, it was enough where if obviously we're from St. Louis and you watch a film, you can pick out certain landmarks and so forth. With that being said, we're going to move right on to our in-studio guest that is an alumni of Webster Groves High School. And as I said earlier, she was around in 1965 whenever CBS and CBS Reports production team came to St. Louis to produce a documentary called 16 in Webster Groves. And
With Charles Corral,
Charles
who
Corral.
was mega famous for features on CBS News.
He was almost iconic. I would rank him up almost, not quite, but almost to like Walter Cronkite. And that's the way it was in 1965. I don't know how
That's
good it was.
exactly right. Who was the guy on the radio that did the commentaries? I'm going blank. We'll figure him out. Go ahead, Stace.
Well, okay, we all have these senior moments. That comes with getting old, and that's okay. But at any rate, I'd like to introduce our audience to Connie Bolte. Connie, welcome to Movies and More.
Well, thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome. And Connie, as I mentioned, you were alumni of Webster Groves High School. Actually, you graduated from there, so you were there for all 4 years. But you were there in 1965. I believe it was in October of that year when CBS News production team, Charles Gras, came to St. Louis to do this documentary. And if you can just tell us a little bit, I guess you almost have to tell us what it was like to be, you were actually 15. You weren't quite 16 yet because you didn't turn 16 until 1966. So you would have been, if my math is right, you would have been a sophomore, right?
That's correct. I was a sophomore that year.
Gotcha. Okay. And what do you remember? And I know this is going back, gosh, I hate to say it, but it's 50 plus years, you know? So you were a spry lass, as the Irish would say. And you and your motley crew were all in this thing. And tell me what it was like to this excitement that was around CBS coming to Webster Groves to do this.
Oh, yeah, we were very excited about it. Nobody could even believe it. Why did they want to come here? But in any case, they did. And as a matter of fact, after the video was shot, well, they didn't call it video back then. There was a copy of it that was at the Webster Groves Public Library, and other copies of it had been distributed around to different colleges because sociology teachers showed it in their sociology classes for years after it was shot. And it was just, if you and nowadays anybody can tune into it on YouTube. You can just Google 16 in Webster Groves, or just go to YouTube and put in the search 16 in Webster Groves, and you can watch it. And at the beginning of it, they wanted to find out what was it like to be a 16-year-old in that, and they gave some statistics about Webster Groves, and they called it an upper middle class suburban neighborhood, and they talked about the average income, and they interviewed not only students, but they interviewed their parents, and they asked a lot of questions. In fact, at the beginning of the video you can see on YouTube, it shows the people from CBS giving out a survey to the 16-year-olds, and there was a 37-page survey where they
Wow.
answered a lot of questions. So who knows where they got all these questions? They wanted to know what the teenagers of the time were thinking, and so a lot of it comes out on there, and it was fun during the time that they were actually filming. We were all excited. Everybody wanted to get in on it.
Sure.
I was actually filmed. You can only really see the back of my head, but I knew it was me because I have a colic back there, and you can't miss that.
Right.
But that was the only part that I was in on, actually.
Right. Right.
I was in a Velvet Freeze one day after school.
Velvet Freeze.
Yeah, that's where we used to go after school.
Well, here, let me tell some listeners that are out of state. Velvet Freeze was a ice cream. I'd call it a sweet shop chain that was
Like a Dairy Queen.
like a Dairy
Just
Queen.
like a Dairy Queen.
So if they would have, I guess, expanded their brand, you'd have had Velvet Freezes all over. But instead, some very wise man got a hold of Dairy Queen, and they did with Dairy Queen with what actually Velvet Freeze was the neighborhood, the school hangout of every high school around, because they were
Mhm.
they were very smart. They placed these stores very, very close to where the kids would hang out, and they were successful. But
Well, so that one day when all the cameras and the booms and all that stuff were all set up there, it was real crowded in there. And I remember sitting down at a table with a bunch of girls. I couldn't tell you who they are now, but we were all looking at this newspaper talking about how it was one of those papers from Webster and Kirkwood. I think probably the Webster Kirkwood Times, but it had pictures of all the football players. And we were just pointing out, oh, isn't he cute? Oh, I like this one. I like that one. And they were trying to record that, but they had put the microphone underneath the paper, and I think the rattling of the paper probably interfered with the sound because it did not wind up in the film itself. But other things that I saw were there was a rally that was held, and I don't remember ever.
Football game rally, right?
It was for the football game, but it was like the night before or just coming up
Right.
to it, and they had a big bonfire at Memorial Park. And so I don't know if we ever had any other rallies prior to that, but they set this rally up, and all the kids were in their cars with the top down, and everybody was making a lot of noise, and they filmed this whole rally, and everybody and all the cheerleaders and everybody making all this noise about the Webster Kirkwood rivalry for Thanksgiving Day for the
Now, real
football
quick,
game.
let me stop right there. For our listeners outside of St. Louis, one of the greatest high school rallies,
Rivalry.
I'll get that word out in a minute. Rivalries in St. Louis was between Webster Groves and Kirkwood.
Mhm.
And if memory serves, and I'm trying to go back, but Webster Groves, I believe, were the statesmen, correct?
Correct.
And I think Kirkwood was
Pioneers.
Pioneers, absolutely. And no disrespect, because I know that's the school you graduated from, but Webster Groves didn't have what you call a real good winning track record with those folks.
It depended on what year it was. Some years they did.
Some years they did, and but that rivalry was actually 100 years old.
Oh,
100
I
years
know.
old. So,
Yeah.
anyway, but go ahead.
Yeah, you
continue.
can actually Google that too.
Yeah.
I think it started in 1898, but there were some years that they didn't hold the game.
Right.
But I know that there was a a Liberty Bell kind of thing that whichever team won got to house the bell for the whole upcoming year.
For whom the bell tolled.
That was
So-
the Turkey Bowl, wasn't it?
Yeah,
The
Turkey Day
Turkey Bowl,
game.
absolutely.
And people would all go to the game on Thanksgiving Day.
Tradition.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, it was a big tradition, and it's still going on today, I think. And anyway, so one of the other things that I remember was the school was pretty large, and there were two main entrances, and I think, if memory serves, they called out over the loudspeaker, and they told us that they wanted to film all of the kids going out, and I believe it was the south entrance, and instead of the north entrance, because they could only be at one place at one time. So they had us the whole school, going out one set of doors instead of two.
Got a little crowded then.
And we never, that was not normal. It was
Right.
not what you would call what we normally
But that
did.
was a photo op. They were trying to get it
Yeah,
on one shot.
And so, yeah, we all crammed through the door. It was just real silly. So, I think some of part of what the program was interviews. And I thought some of the questions they asked and some of the answers they got from these young girls, I would liken it to today's Valley Girl. They made us, they put the things on there that made
a
us
little demeaning.
and made us
Yes.
look like little Valley girls. Not that we knew Valley girls back then, but that's what they did. They made us really look kind of buffoonish. And that's they did bring a copy of it back to our school, and we all got to view the film at school after it was made. And of course, everyone watched it on television too. And we had some discussions about it. And I guess that's why they used it for sociology classes, because it would really spark some discussions.
Certainly.
So I have a question for you, Connie.
Sure.
Looking back years later, thumbs up or thumbs down on Charles Carroll?
Oh, he was great, but I just think he kind of slanted our little town there a little bit towards making us look silly.
Well,
Sure.
now I've watched. As a matter of fact, I'm dating myself too, because I'm actually just a day or two older than you. I think it's 42 days. Is it something like that?
49.
49 days, but who's counting, right? But at any rate, during the in 65 when that came out,
It came out in 66, but it was
66.
shot.
Shot in
It
65.
was in the fall of 65
Right.
that they shot it. Yeah.
Exactly. But so that was original programming on CBS, and I
Yeah.
had the honor and privilege of watching that when it first aired on CBS.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in St. Louis probably watched that.
Well, I went to an inner city school, Northwest
Mhm.
High School, and we were just wondering, hey, when are they going to come to Northwest High School? You know, I mean, that's our school. Hey, we can kick their butt. Why don't they come here? Well, anyway, they never did. So we're still waiting for the invite for, now, of course, Charles Carroll has since passed away.
Yeah.
But anyway, we were envious. We were,
Well, yeah,
we were jealous
it
because
was
you guys got all the press and we got bumpkins. We got nothing.
It was a nice school. We had a lot of good types of facilities, such as a good home economics, program that had kitchens and sewing machines and all those things. So
So
we
that's
were,
the goddess stuff.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, we
right.
learned.
Well, one of the interesting things was now I'm going to share kind of a little of our personal history. I had the honor and privilege of escorting you to your 50th anniversary of your high school graduating class of 1968.
Hmm.
And during that time, I was kind of like the odd man out. Stacy, whose room were you in? Who's your homeroom? Well, you see, I went to an inner city school, and I'm just like hanging out. Oh, okay. But really, all kidding aside, they treated me with the utmost respect. And what was interesting was, for sure, the conversation came up about 16 and Webster Groves.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned, I guess, earlier that they had actually talked to the parents,
Hmm.
and there were certain questions that they were posing to them about, how they felt.
Well, they expected all their kids to go to college and that sort of thing.
Exactly. So they were kind of looking at, kind of where, if there was an advantage to be in a suburban St. Louis school as a college preparatory type of school, you would get to a certain point, and then everybody was expected that back then, the traditional husband and wife, mama stayed home with the babies and the guy went to work and whatever.
Exactly.
So in order to get a better job, they expected to go to college.
And all the girls were either going to be teachers or nurses.
Right. And
and
what
of course-
did you become, Connie?
Well, I was a teacher.
Well, you were a great teacher, I'm
But-
sure.
They had dress codes. We had to wear. We couldn't wear. Mini skirts became popular about that time, and we couldn't wear them to school.
Right.
And I remember getting sent home one time because I wore a sweatshirt.
Oh my
I had to go home and change, and it was different back then.
Did they expel you?
No, they just made me go home and change.
So-
You couldn't
so-
come into school with a sweatshirt
Oh,
on.
that was not.
That was terrible. There were some riots going on back then in like Selma, Alabama, and that sort of thing. And they were. I think Charles Kuralt was trying to get at if. I think some of the questions were whether or not some of us teenagers were, concerned about all that, and I don't think that anybody really knew very much about it in Webster Groves at that time.
Well, just for the record, Webster Groves was integrated because there was an African American community
Yeah,
within
That's
within
correct.
the Webster Groves School District. So, I mean, being an integrated school, you never thought about it. It was just it was a non-concerned thing.
We did not have big racial issues like that was going on down there. We pretty much all got along pretty well, I thought.
Right. Well, one of the interesting things as I was watching the documentary, and you mentioned, I guess, on YouTube, I noticed that all the guys had, kind of the short hair and about 5 pounds of Brylcream. A little dab will do you well, a bigger dab will do you better, I guess, or whatever. But that period of time just preceded the long hair movement by guys,
Yeah, well, the Beatles started that.
Actually, and I think the Beatles came to the United States in February of 1964, and I remember at the time, oh, look at those weirdos with that long hair. And
Oh,
then the same guys that were saying that 3 years later had hairs down to their bottom.
and I can tell you this, KXOK with Johnny Rabbit had a film festival thing where they showed the Beatles
Yep,
performing,
yep.
and it was up on the film. And it was a bazillion of us young girls, and we were all screaming as if they were there. It was this on a movie. but yeah, they actually did that.
Well, that was a big time, absolutely. And you
Yeah.
mentioned Johnny Rabbit, and their broadcast studios used to be on North Kings Highway. You remember that, Mark? That's where they were. And that was right, I mean, just a stone's throw to the Parkmore restaurant. Remember the Parkmore that used to be there? And so at that particular time, Johnny Rabbit was driving, I want to say it was a 1965 or 66 red Cadillac convertible. And I thought, my God, that guy must be making $1 million a year. I mean,
I just remember his hat with the ears.
yeah, you couldn't buy those ears. I mean, you had to be a radio disc jockey to own those ears for sure. But the thing is that it was such a cool car. I said, by golly, so one of these days I'm going to have me a Cadillac. Well, I never got a convertible. I did, however, in 1981 buy a Coupe de Ville two-door, but not a convertible. So I almost made it. But that whole era of KXOK, which we are now on KXOK, that was just brings back a lot.
We
of
all
memories.
listened to KXOK. That was the big station. I mean, everybody listened to KXOK.
Absolutely.
I think this at the time when 16 and Webster was filmed, I don't know if FM was even in vogue very much. I
right.
think it was probably around, but nobody had a great station that everybody listened to very much at that time. KXOK was the in station.
You had to listen
For
to
the
KXOK.
years.
And we all
Hey guys, I got to jump in here. We got to get to one more film that does involve you and Connie.
Oh,
And I'm not.
shame
So
on
we
us.
interrupt this Connie story with another Connie story.
Okay.
So there was a film shot in St. Louis a big chunk of it in 2008, 2009, starring George Clooney, called Up in the Air.
Yes, Up in
Won
the
some
Air.
Oscars, had a bunch of nominations, 6 nominations. It was directed by Jason Reitman, and you guys actually were in that film. Tell us about it.
We were indeed, and I'm going to give just a little brief thing. We owe our performance, our existence in that film because of Connie's insistence. When the word got out that they were going to shoot Up in the Air here, Connie said, "Stace, I want to be an extra in that movie." Well, of course, I've been around the business for a long time, and I know that what we call the cattle call for extras. I mean, you'll have like 1,000 people show up for maybe 100 extra spots. I said, Connie, there's no way in the world. I mean, we're going to be wasting our time. Well, much to her credit, she wouldn't take no for an answer, and she grabbed my bottom and down there.
I dragged him along with
Dragged
me,
you
and there was
along.
like 2,000 people trying to get 10 rolls or something.
Well, actually, we were told that the day before night, it was at the old Crestwood Mall,
Yep.
which
Crestwood
which
Plaza.
sadly to say doesn't exist anymore. It's
Right.
a big part. What the? I don't even know what
A
they're
big
going to do.
pile of dirt.
Big pile of dirt. That's what it is. To be announced what's going to happen. But at any rate, we stood in line. As I recall, we got there about 8:30. I think it wasn't until about 3 when we finally got up next to
We had to sit down at some tables and fill out some papers.
fill out some papers.
And then we had to wait in this line that was about 6 hours
6 hours.
long of a
Well,
wait.
the beautiful part about this was we sit down during the course of sitting and or standing in this long line. I got thirsty, and there was like a little bar near there. Now I hadn't really drank in like 30 years, but I got to tell you, because of the pressure of being interviewed for Up in the Air,
Of course.
I slammed 4 Heinekens, which I shouldn't have done. Yeah, so I'm telling you, I was buzzed by the time we got there. So we sit down, and this real nice lady says, "Okay, now, okay, I'm looking at, okay, Stacy, tell me about what work you've done in the business." I said, "Well, I once played a pair of nuts," and she said, "Excuse me?" I said, "I once played a pair of nuts." She said, "Okay. How does one play a pair of nuts?" I said, "Very carefully." She said, "Okay, tell me more." And I said, "Well, I was in a 2nd grade play called Our Friends in the Forest. And I was the nuts that the squirrel had to bury because the winter's coming." Now, I got to tell you, the play didn't get much box office, but it got great reviews. So she starts laughing like crazy. I mean, she thought it was hilarious. And she said, "Okay, and Connie, what do you do?" And she said, "I'm with him." So we left there, and so I'm almost crying. I'm apologetic because I've gotten buzzed, and I probably insulted this lady, and I didn't mean to do it. I said, "Honey, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was saying. I shouldn't have been running my mouth." Well, anyway, 3 days later, my granddaughter Kayla is at the house, and the phone rings, and so she answers and says, "This is the director assistant for Up in the Air, and you want Connie and Stacy to be at it was a church."
It was a section of the film that they made
The wedding, right?
at a
Yeah.
wedding reception.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we showed up. And so the lady said, "Now, do you know where Maplewood is?" Well, we live in Dogtown. It's like 5 minutes away, And I had traveled all over the country trying to do movies and this and that. And so my big entree in the movie business was with Connie here in I would say a commanding role that lasted all of 8 seconds, right?
Well, maybe
Okay.
just to the left of George. When they were dancing at the wedding reception, you can see my face for
Right.
a
Well,
few seconds.
you see her face, and you see my little yarmulke spot, the little back in the back. So it was kind of a shoulder over kind of a shot. But Connie did a great job in that. It was a wonderful.
I was acting.
You were acting. You were in character as well. Yes, absolutely. And but it was fantastic. Well, to sum up this show, I would say that St. Louis has shown its ability to produce some really good stuff. We mentioned Up in the Air, and there were just so many other things. And we'd really like, as a city and as a state, to get back in the film business And I'm just going to say out there to the Missouri legislator, get off your bottoms, pass the doggone film and television production tax credits. Let's attract some more productions back to St. Louis.
Yes, Stacy and I are co-writers of several works now, and we would really like to be able to get things going so we can make more movies in St. Louis.
Absolutely. John, I know you want to add something because you two are a co-screenwriter and producer and director and all those wonderful things. And we've got a couple of minutes, so real quick, just tell us about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I shot a feature film in St. Louis called Under a Blood Red Sky a few years ago that I wrote, directed, played one of the main characters in, and edited it three different times. And there are people just like me in the St. Louis area, and we would love to be able to make all of our projects in St. Louis. I mostly go to New York when I'm looking for actors, unknown actors, because there's somewhere around 100,000 unemployed actors up there. Every bartender, every valet.
Well, everybody in New York is trying to get in the film business.
Yeah.
Well, you've been listening
They all
to
have a headshot.
You've been listening to Movies and More with John Brandon, Stacy Hovis, and our guest, Connie Bolte. And we look forward to having you come back next week. And remember, don't forget to take your mama to church.
Yep.
See you all later. Bye-bye.
Be a top girl if she pleases a tired businessman. Hooray for Hollywood! You may be homely in your neighborhood.
To be an actor, see Mr. Factor, you make your kisser look good.
Go out and try your luck, you may be Donald Duck. Hooray for Hollywood! Hooray for Hollywood!
Hey, Benny! Hi, Ronnie! Come on, brother, here.
Hooray for Hollywood! That woolly white and woolly Hollywood! They hire cowboys and they hang their chaps up and all their maps up and give them all that they lack. Now ain't it funny? They pay them money. Shows what you can do if your horse can act. Hooray for Hollywood! They hire fellas whose physiques are good. And then they tell them they're the perfect shape men to act like ape men, and they convince them they should. They make them fat and yell, oh, and people think they're smart.